It's now been the better part of a year since cracking open my first box of Wessel Nickel & Gross composite action parts. I've gotten a chance to see what it's like to install them, regulate them, and most importantly, to play an action that's built with them. The results are in, so stay tuned to find out what I and some other pianists that I had in think of them. I just want to quickly thank those who have donated via the Buy Me a Coffee link below my videos. I mean, you and I both know that pianos are pretty much the most interesting thing ever, but it remains a niche subject that will probably never really blow up on YouTube. Yet these videos take a lot of time to make, and contributions like this allow me to set aside that time. So thank you, and enjoy the show. So in my first video on Wessel Nickel & Gross composite parts, we went over the features, the claims that the company makes, as well as my initial impressions. With this video, we will be able to take both a hindsight look of what it was like to install them and see what it's like to play on a composite action. Now, of course, the best way to determine whether you want to embrace this new technology is to play a composite action yourself. But I've tried to do the next best thing to you being able to actually touch the piano. I created some hidden camera footage, so you get to see unadulterated, unfiltered first impressions of the piano. I also feel like you can glean a lot from an action by watching a pianist play it. So yours truly will play a piece by Grieg, which kind of requires a decent amount of nuance. That's how I'll end the video. And also I had a pianist over, really gifted, very sensitive pianist, who is a self-proclaimed composite skeptic, and he agreed to do a little testimonial in his own words of what he thought. The piano used for this video is one of the pianos on my online store. If you want to see what I'm offering currently, you can go to insidepianos.com. So what was it like installing these Wessel Nickel & Gross parts? Many aspects went just fine or even excellent, but I did hit a few snags, and there are also a few things to definitely be aware of if you are considering these parts. Starting with the repetitions or the whip-ins, one of the things that I wasn't aware of is that due to the low clearance on the bottom of the repetitions, on many brands of piano you actually need to shave away wooden material from the mounting rail that the whip-ins go on. This was certainly the case for my Baldwin, and it looks like it would be the case were I to put them on my Chickering. I've definitely heard of other people having to do this, so it's not a rare thing. The good news is that for Steinway & Sons, which is the most commonly restored piano, you don't have to do that. Their rail doesn't conflict with the design. But perhaps you can imagine the nervousness of sending sometimes a vintage piece of wood through your table saw to remove this little bit of wood. I'm happy to say it went beautifully, in part because Wessel Nickel & Gross, they describe the procedure online, give good pictures, good descriptions, and it really did help me through the process. I mentioned in my first video that it seems that in having this low clearance, they are really honing in on idealism, on making these parts just the optimal dimension. Hello, I'm present day Ben, and I'm just going to jump in from time to time as an older, wiser version of myself. Because after filming most of this video, I had the opportunity to take part in a seminar given by the developers of Wessel Nickel & Gross parts. And that allowed me to clarify some things directly with them. Regarding the occasional necessity to remove wood from mounting rails, I was on track where they were endeavoring to make the highest performance whip-in, and that meant a low profile. That reduced the weight of the heel. And since their goal is performance, that means that sometimes technicians will have to take that measure. Sometimes to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. And stay tuned to find out just how delicious that omelet ends up being. One issue that I didn't expect to come up with is that there was a fit problem with the Baldwin part on my Baldwin. I was working on a 1959 Baldwin, and the flange of the repetition did not fit on nicely to the rail. And I was also working on a 1981 Baldwin at the time, and that wouldn't have it wouldn't have fit that action either. Now both of these pianos were under 7 feet, which means they were not the action that Renner created for Baldwin. Maybe their Baldwin part is meant to fit those higher tier models of Baldwin. But in any case, Wessel, Nickel, and Gross, they were very responsive in remedying this. They sent me a set of Whippins, which had the correct flange, but it did mean that I had to glue on the proper heel. So that took a little more time. Additionally, that Whippin came with an attached hammer wrist felt that didn't work for the hammer stroke of my Baldwin. So I had to remove all of those as well. I also had a clearance issue between the bottom of my hammer rest rail and the backs of the Whippins, but this was pretty quickly remedied by a chisel. I imagine that my experience was about as worse as it gets in terms of those issues. If I was on a time crunch, that would have been a problem. But one thing that is cool is that WNG sends you a sample kit. I've got mine right here. And you can compare these parts with the parts that you are trying to replace, like in actual life. And when I ordered the Baldwin parts, I didn't have this set yet. So they really do what they can to, to allow you to do the right thing. And this was totally for free. Present day Ben again. I just wanted to add that although I'd hoped to get a part that worked right off the bat, the fact that they have so many interchangeable parts is really a strength of their system. The combinations really are myriad, which can help with historic pianos or pianos that are just somehow off the beaten path. They have, I think, 3 different jack angles that you can select from. And of course, they have a variety of heel heights that can be placed at the bottom of each of their Whippins. I also wanted to point out the huge amount of freedom that a technician has in placing the heel front to back, and also the knuckle front to back. Looking at these parts, you can see that there are several slots in which to place the heel or the knuckle. But not only that, you can have half sizes in between that if you turn the knuckle or the heel around. So this is great for people who are wanting to play with geometry or, again, just customize these parts to fit an unusual action. So let's move on to hanging hammers. And here there's another facet that's unique to these parts, in addition to possibly having to remove wood for your Whippin mounts. When mounting hammers onto Wessel, Nickel, and Gross shanks, you want to use the special CA glue that they supply specifically. From what I understand, they've been through several iterations with this glue. And in the early days, I think you had to add a hardener or an accelerator to harden the glue. Maybe they also had experimented with drying times. I've got to say, they've really dialed it in at this point, and I give them very high marks for the glue that they include. It took me maybe a little while to get used to, but very soon I was off and running. The time that it takes for the glue to go from maneuverable to set is just perfect. I forget what it is in minutes, maybe a minute and a half, something like that, but I found it very workable. And I've had no issue with any hammers coming loose. In terms of regulation, that went just fine. WNG does a really nice job of quality controlling the parts that they send out, and so there were no wonky screws or the jacks were very well centered in the windows, so I was just really ready to go on that. I mentioned in my first video that rather than having screw adjust repetition lever springs, they use butterfly springs, which are a little more persnickety to adjust, takes a little more time. Again, I think they were trying to just shave off grams. So yep, that's exactly what they were doing. By eliminating the adjust screw, they made the Whippin lighter and therefore more responsive. They also point out that the ability to deal with a butterfly spring is something that should be in any technician's arsenal. And further, when dealing with new weapons that have the adjust screw, oftentimes you have to get in there and adjust the spring to be within the realm of screw adjustability anyway. So there you have it. So on to the fun part, where we find out what pianists actually think of these parts. We'll start with the hidden camera footage. And what I would do is when I heard the pianist arrive, I would start my camera, and then I would try to ask, what do you think of the feel? Just so they weren't responding just to the piano generally, but there's a lot to experience when responding to a piano. I'm sure the sound of this particular piano was part of what they were commenting on. But for what it's worth, here are unfiltered, unedited reactions from unsuspecting pianists.
This is nice.
Glad
it's so even.
Right? Yeah.
Like there's not one spot where it's like, usually you get up high and it's like the color changes a little bit. You get down low and it's like, wow, I have like there's the bass. I am now in the bass. This is just.
And are you talking about kind of the voicing of it more than the feel of it, maybe?
Well, the feel of it is definitely the same because there aren't notes that like stick out in terms of like playing them, and you're having to like actually do things physically differently.
Right.
But even just in terms of quality of sound.
Right. Yeah.
You're not having to adjust to a particular region that you happen to be in.
Yeah.
Nice.
I want you to see what you think of that action, because it's a composite action.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
It's very even. Oh, very nice, yeah. It's very easy to play. Yeah,
I find it. Yeah, I find it play about 5 to 10% better on this piano.
yeah. But I like it though.
Oh yeah.
Practice, so I.
Good for you.
Right. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, right. Next up, we have a self-described composite skeptic. I would even go so far as to say I think he wanted to dislike the composite action. Well, here's what he had to say.
Hey friends, so I just wanted to report that I have been converted in a sense. I had always been extremely skeptical of composite piano actions, and thanks to Ben here, I just got the experience of playing on a very well-regulated exemplar of a composite piano action, and I wanted to relate a couple of interesting features of my experience. I was expecting to find the action easy to play in a way that was irritating. I was expecting to find it too simple, too light, too direct in ways that would interfere with the playing experience. And what I found instead was that it was very pleasantly like ice skating. I had this contact with the surface, but I could just move around at will very effortlessly. And so it was easy in a good way, and that I was able to do things that I was hearing without needing to think too much or to fight the mechanism of the piano. So just to say, if you're skeptical as I am, maybe you should try it out. Maybe you should give Ben a call and try this one out, because it works really well.
So before we get to the Grieg, I just want to offer a few final thoughts. As you can see, on certain models of pianos, one has to pay one's dues a little bit to get these parts to work. But I hope it's clear from both the piano's reaction, and I'm happy to attest myself, that if you can get beyond that, you will be left with a really incredible playing experience. These parts definitely push further the envelope of what's possible in a piano action, and I find that incredibly exciting. I will add, too, that the company itself has been a real pleasure to deal with, and in having the opportunity to see the developers talk about their product, I just see the open-mindedness, the desire to keep growing, and to be honest about how these parts are working. So without any further ado, let's enjoy the fruits of their and my, let's be honest, labor.